The Supreme Court will hear arguments this morning in a landmark case over what's called gender-affirming care for minors. Specifically at issue is a Tennessee law that bans puberty blockers and hormone treatments for children under 18 who identify as transgender. Similar laws have passed in 24 states just in the last 3 years. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford is at the Supreme Court. Jan, good morning.
Good morning, Vlad. You know, this is the biggest case of the Supreme Court's term, and we talk to families on both sides of the issue. They either have children who identify as trans, or they once did and have since changed their mind, and they both want the same thing, for their kids to be happy, but their views on how to get there are very different.
She was 12 when she first came out to us. I don't feel like a guy. You know, I feel more like a girl. Just severe discomfort with her body.
I think most parents have a view of how they see their children in the future growing up. And I think you have to let go of that and let them be who they're going to be.
Brian and Samantha Williams' daughter, LW, came out as transgender 4 years ago.
I do remember really hesitant of being really afraid of growing facial hair and just really thinking, oh, I would really not like facial hair. I had a cousin who came out as transgender. I was, as soon as she came out, I realized that's something that I can do.
LW started medication to stop male puberty 9 months later and female hormones at 15. They ask us not to show her face.
It's made me a lot more confident.
People act like it's a flippant decision.
Yeah.
Like that we're just running out and putting our kids on hormones without thinking about it. It's not. It's a long process.
A process that now is in the Supreme Court. The family is at the center of the case on whether states like Tennessee, where they live, can ban puberty blockers and hormone treatments for children under 18.
What would it mean for you if somehow you couldn't get this medication?
It would be terrifying. I believe that it would have a severe negative impact on me.
Families on both sides can agree on this one point.
So gender dysphoria is real, and these children do feel acute distress in their bodies.
Where these families deeply disagree is over the question of medical intervention for children, and that is what this case is about.
We need to talk about actually what the Constitution permits.
San Francisco area mom Erin Friday heads Our Duty, a group of parents raising former and current trans-identifying children. They oppose transition drugs for minors.
No child should be subjected to any gender interventions whatsoever.
Friday's daughter was 13 when she said she was a trans boy.
I am a mother of a formerly trans-identified son.
School teacher Ariane Adamchikova said her son was 16 when he came out as a trans girl.
His dad and I were very open to different gender expressions, and we just figured that this was an experimental phase. And so I was like, yeah, you know what, dress however you want. Like, cool, that's great. I was open to all of it. But then I realized if he went to the doctor, they were going to prescribe him hormones. And he was begging for the hormones. He was begging for puberty blockers.
The doctors told me my daughter would commit suicide if I didn't transition her.
The doctors told you that?
They did.
Both women, self-described liberals, did not let their children take medication, which can be irreversible. They said their kids went through intensive psychotherapy, and after about 18 months, both children detransitioned.
When you're 25, if you decide that's the pathway you need, then we will, of course, love you and support you in your decision.
While 0.6% of the adult population identifies as trans, increasingly families are facing these difficult decisions for their children. More than 5% of high school students now identify as transgender or are questioning whether they may be.
I feel very much for those parents that are in this bind because the pressure on them from their kids is huge. I felt it all the time. I could not stop thinking about it.
All we're trying to do is make the best decisions for our kid.
Make the best decisions.
Yeah. Make them be healthy and happy and make sure that, they have all that they need to move on to adulthood.
Now, as you can see, both families, both sides of these families, they just want to protect their kids, and they both believe that the other side's approach will cause terrible harm. You know, this can be a really hard issue to talk about, but what the court decides in this case after these arguments later this morning, that is going to have a tremendous impact on the personal choices of countless people across the country. Vlad?
So Jan, what arguments will the justices ultimately consider when they make their ruling?
Well, Vlad, the Biden administration is siding with parents of trans-identified children, and they're asking the justices to reverse a lower court ruling that upheld these state bans. The lower court said that these treatments for trans-identified children were so new that there could be irreversible with lifelong effects that states were free to restrict them. The Biden administration is saying that these kind of medicines have been used before for children who, for example, may have entered puberty at a very young age. So they're saying to deny them to trans-identified kids would violate the Constitution. Vlad?
Why can't you hear? Jan, what's going on around you with the radios?
Oh, it's a huge day, like I said, the biggest, and I'm sorry I have to keep holding my ear. I can barely hear you because there's a huge crowd gathered for these arguments. There are rallies planned throughout the day, music blaring, as you can hear, long lines of people trying to get inside the courtroom, Vlad.
Incredibly complicated and nuanced. Jan Crawford, thank you very much for enlightening us. Appreciate it.